Hey everybody, welcome, welcome to Hidden Horror. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate that. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Hidden Horror. Today I'm bringing you part two of my mini little collection about the work that the U.S. Secret Service has done reviewing mass shootings for the period of 2016 to 2020. Let's jump in, let's get started. I'm going to start with a video. Okay. This is a short video. It's just over 2 minutes. It's by the U.S. Secret Service. It's titled Preventing Targeted Violence, Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center. Okay. Let's get started.
Secret Service is a very small agency with a very large mission.
NTAC was created to help the Secret Service, but now it's helping the broader community, whether it's protecting schools, protecting workplaces, protecting communities and other spaces, because everyone has a role in prevention, and we want to make sure we're getting this information out there.
Secret Service pioneered the field of threat assessment over 20 years ago as a means to prevent assassination. But we have found that that same model for prevention is applicable to other forms of targeted violence.
Secret Service just released a study of school shootings and how to stop them.
The Secret Service tells CBS News that
we don't focus on one particular motive.
NTAC's mission is unique. There isn't any other component out there that's doing what NTAC does.
A research center, though, we are operational. We are the science behind our protective intelligence mission within the Secret Service.
The National Threat Assessment Center, or NTAC, conducts research on targeted violence incidents, and we focus on the best practices of targeted violence prevention.
The number one mission of the Secret Service is violence prevention. It is preventing a harmful outcome.
My background in emergency management really highlighted the importance of partnerships, and you can't do this alone.
Every day we're trying to make things safer for my kids and everybody else's kids at school. The NTAC team are ready and willing to help communities across the country end violence and save lives.
It's a wide variety of targeted violence that we study to try to get at the thinking of the individuals who carry out these attacks. You just never know where you're going to have that opportunity to stop something from happening.
Okay, excellent video. Very nice to just introduce part two. It's coming from their threat assessment component, and they really did put a lot of effort into looking at these mass shooting incidents. And they really want to help us, the public, partner together, partner with schools, partner with law enforcement, partner with employees, anywhere where there would be a gathering of people where these mass shootings are happening. And that's why I'm bringing this information to you. This is part two, okay, of improving school safety. Not just school safety, but on the job, in any type of public area. We want to improve the safety of individuals by using this resource, this report that the U.S. Service released in January of 2023, okay? So we're starting now off with key implications, and I'm taking this information directly from the report. It's linked on the Hidden Horror Facebook page, okay? So let's get started. And I'm going to share my screen to show you where we are in the report, because I don't want you to get behind. So let me share my screen here. We are here. where it says key implications, okay? Many of the pre-attack behaviors described in this report are not suspicious on their own, and some involve constitutionally protected activity. Most individuals who exhibit these types of behaviors will not commit acts of targeted violence. NTAC's research continues to affirm that there is no profile for the type of person who will commit an attack. The U.S. Secret Service recognizes behavioral threat assessment as the best practice for targeted violence prevention because it does not utilize profiles but focuses on identifying and assessing threatening and concerning behavior in context and identifying the most appropriate strategies for reducing any risk of violence while also maintaining individual civil and constitutional rights. So they don't want to have a profile. They want to focus on behaviors. They're assessing the behaviors, any threatening action, any type of behavior that would identify them, that would make them stand out, because they want to reduce any risk that any type of violence would occur by identifying the people. This is prevention, okay? Based on this study examining mass attacks in public spaces from 2016 to 2020 and building on NTAC's extensive history of studying all forms of targeted violence, the following operational implications are presented in support of developing policies and protocols for behavioral threat assessment programs. So these are the key implications. We are right here. Key implications. The first one, communities must encourage and facilitate bystander reporting and be prepared to respond when reports of concern are received. So if you're a bystander and you see something, say something. But then we have to go to the next step. We have to make sure that something is done about it. When a report is made, we have to do something about it. So I give you the example of Colt Gray. They may have dropped the ball if the schools were not notified. Well, he did go from county to county. He went to multiple schools in different districts, but we have to make sure that the schools are notified of any threat. Okay, any threat made, you want to make sure that they're getting notified. Just like if a parent is aware of the behavior of any mental health issues, we want to make sure that we're doing something about it, that all of the concerns are not just reported, but something is done about it also, okay? 3/4 of the attackers exhibited concerning behaviors and communications. So those behaviors is something that people can see. Maybe they made a threat. In the instance of Colt Gray, he allegedly joked around about mass shooters. They say that he was fascinated. He was obsessed with mass shootings, allegedly. And then what kind of communications? Were there any text messages? Was there any searches done? Okay, was anything sent? Was anything posted on social media about mass shootings? Okay. Those who observe these behaviors have varying degrees of association with the attacker. So could that be a friend? Could that be at a school, maybe a teacher, maybe an administrator, maybe a security guard? Could that be somebody like a coworker? Could that be a spouse? Is a threat made at home, a sibling heard something or saw something, okay? They included family members, friends, neighbors, co-workers, school staff, mental health professionals, and local officials, as well as members of the public, both online and in person. So again, I'll go back to Colt Gray. Allegedly, the threat to do a mass shooting was made on the online platform Discord. Okay? But we've seen it in other cases on social media and other platforms. The breadth of people who observe these behaviors highlights the necessity of bystander reporting and behavioral threat assessment programs to assess and manage the risk posed by those individuals. Communities have made great strides in facilitating and encouraging bystander reporting of concerning behavior, and many environments have adopted behavioral threat assessment programs as part of their approach, including workplaces, schools, universities, government agencies, and police departments. These organizations should continue to promote open and receptive communication between themselves and the public, ensuring that bystanders know what, when, and how to report behavior that elicits concerns for safety. So going back to, if you see something, say something. Report it. Let someone know. If you want to be anonymous, do it in a way that you're not giving out your information. But please report that threat because we're trying to keep people safe, okay? Point number 2, communities should not wait for a direct and specific threat before taking action. While many attackers make direct or indirect threats prior to their attacks, the statements often lack specificity. Of those who made threats against the person or group, they ultimately targeted a few specified where or when the attack would take place. This demonstrates why waiting for an explicit threat that names the target, location, and timing of an intended attack will result in missed opportunities to prevent violence. So what they're saying is we don't want to wait. If we know the details, they don't have to be specific. For example, we know the location, the day, the time. It may not come that specific, but if we know the information that there is an intended threat, an attack, we report that information so we can prepare, so we can try to prevent any violence from happening. Such specificity, something that is often thought of as required to justify a response, should not be viewed as a threshold for taking preventive action when other warning signs of violence are present. Early intervention is key to prevention and can be accomplished using existing community resources, including crisis intervention programs, social services, mental health treatment, and if warranted, a criminal justice response. So they're saying these are the ways we can engage that threat. We can do something to try to intervene. We can maybe involve social services. We may be able to get that person some mental health treatment. And if warranted, we may have to involve law enforcement, but we do want to intervene to try to prevent any type of violence from occurring, okay? So now we're on the next page. Next one. Individuals displaying an unusual interest in violent topics, especially past attackers, should elicit concerns. So we know with Colt Gray, allegedly he was interested in various mass shootings that happened in the past, and some of the mass shooters, he looked into them, he was very interested in them, and this should at least elicit some concern if they're spending a lot of their time looking at violent things, researching violent topics, maybe their interest in guns or harming others, okay, mass shootings. 1/5 of attackers had an excessive, inappropriate, or concerning interest in a violent topic, evidenced by such behaviors as repeatedly viewing footage of beheadings, writing and recording songs with violent themes, posting online about previous attacks, and keeping a journal about wanting to physically harm others. As part of their planning, 7 attackers conducted research specifically into prior mass attacks, including the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, the Oklahoma City bombing, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, and the Christchurch Mosque shootings in New Zealand. This is consistent with prior NTAC findings from Protecting America's Schools, a U.S. Secret Service analysis of targeted school violence 2019, which found that half of K through 12 school attackers from 2008 to 2017 had displayed an unusual or concerning interest in violent topics, including the Columbine High School shooting and Nazism. Public safety professionals should recognize an unusual interest in violent topics as worthy of concern, especially an interest in previous mass attackers. Businesses should consider establishing workplace violence prevention plans to identify, assess, and intervene with current employees, former employees, and customers who may pose a risk of violence. In this study, half of the attacks involved one or more business locations, and the attackers often had a prior relationship with the business, either as a current or former employee or as a customer. What's more, some in this study were motivated in whole or in part by a workplace grievance. So they're saying when you have these workplace attacks, when you have this workplace violence, a lot of times it's a current or former employee and they have some type of grievance. Maybe they didn't get a promotion. Maybe they were terminated. Maybe they didn't get the raise they wanted. Maybe they saw other people get promoted and that angered them. Maybe there was some upset about work responsibilities. It could be all kind of workplace grievances, okay? Workplace should establish behavioral threat assessment programs as a component of their workplace violence prevention plans, and businesses should also establish proactive relationships with area law enforcement so that they may work collaboratively to respond to incidents involving a concern for violence, whether that concern arises from a current employee, a former employee, or a customer. So they really want companies, businesses to have a plan to really address issues that arise from current employees, former employees, or customers where there may be a threat of violence in the workplace. The next one, public safety, school, workplace, and community service professionals should consider strategies for resolving interpersonal grievances. So this is our fifth key. In this study, attackers display a range of motives for carrying out acts of violence, and in half of the incidents, attackers were motivated by some type of grievance. These grievances were more often related to a personal issue, such as bullying, ongoing feuds with neighbors, or issues with family members. In other attacks, grievances were related to a current or former domestic relationship or workplace issue. By understanding an individual's motive to perpetrate a violent act, public safety and other professionals will be better equipped to employ management strategies and resources that will help de-escalate situations involving interpersonal conflicts. So really, this is about conflict resolution. When people have issues, whether they be in school or in the workplace, you really want to have a plan in place to deal with those issues so no violence is carried out in these areas at a school, at a job, in an organization, right? You even want to have some de-escalation skills in relationships, whether they be domestic or it could be neighbor to neighbor, right? You want to have ways to resolve issues, to talk about things so that people don't carry and be embittered by these grievances. Okay, so we're going to go on. We're on number 6. Individuals tasked with community violence prevention must understand the impact of violent and hateful rhetoric while protecting the constitutional rights to free speech. 1/4 of the attackers in this study subscribed to a hate-focused, conspiratorial, or topic-specific belief system. These beliefs were often directed to a protected class with biases expressed against others based on race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, and gender identity. Hate-based beliefs included anti-Semitism, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-Asian, anti-white, misogyny, and race-based supremacy. Other beliefs involved anti-government and anti-police views. Government agencies and community organizations should continue directing resources, training, and public messaging toward countering hate and other extremist belief systems that have historically been associated with violence. So I'll sum that up. Hate speech, hate propaganda, hate information, it breeds violence. It makes people angry. It makes people kind of up in arms and they want to do something about it. So you want to really allow people their freedom of speech, but also be aware that sometimes hateful speech, hateful rhetoric, it can really cause someone to want to do violence to someone else. And we don't ever want that to happen. So you want to reduce that as much as you can. You still want to allow people to have the freedom of speech, but we don't want to subscribe to any hateful focused type of speech or rhetoric or information or propaganda against anybody, including all of the groups that I said that typically will have some hate said about them. So we're going on to the next page. This is number 7. Okay. So misogyny and domestic violence deserve increased attention from those tasked with mass violence prevention. Nearly half of the attackers were found to have had a history of domestic violence, misogynistic behaviors, or both. Though not all who possess misogynistic views are violent, viewpoints that describe women as the enemy or call for violence against women remain a cause for concern. Nearly all of those who display misogynistic behaviors were found to have concerned others at some point prior to their attack. These findings, along with those highlighted in NTAC's case study, Hot Yoga Tallahassee, a case study on misogynistic extremism from 2022, illustrate that misogyny can play a central role in motivating an attacker to perpetrate mass violence, as well as engage in more prevalent acts of violence, including stalking and domestic abuse. No matter the context, responding to the threat posed by hatred toward women requires collaboration across multiple community systems, including law enforcement, courts, mental health providers, and domestic violence and hate crime advocacy groups. Okay, we're going on to number 8, another key. Other platforms may be utilized by individuals to make violent communications and to share violent rhetoric and ideas. The internet allows individuals to come together and share common interests across online platforms and communities. However, these online communities can provide a place for violent and concerning ideas to manifest. Nearly one quarter of attackers were found to have conveyed concerning communications online, such as threats to harm others and posts referencing suicidal ideations, previous mass shootings, violent content, and hate toward a particular ethnic group. One attacker was a member of an online chat group where members discussed plans to carry out school attacks. The attacker told the group that he planned to kill his father and that he would initiate a school attack the next day, which he did. Another attacker had subscribed to anonymous radical online image boards over a year prior to his attack, and he later told officers this was when he started to adopt hatred toward Jewish people. These findings demonstrate the continued need for encouraging the public to report concerning, threatening, and violent content observed across online platforms. Well, if the people are in the group, they're not going to report somebody in the hateful group. But overall, if you see any type of violent or hateful speech, writing, imagery, you should report it. If it's online or if it's written in a journal or if it's written on school paperwork, if it's a note at work, you should report that because that helps possibly prevent any violence from happening, but also it identifies that the person has this mindset, this violent thinking, and that they possibly could carry out those threats, act them out. Okay. I think I'm on number 9, key number 9. We'll go to the next one. Individuals sharing final communications or engaging in other final acts may warrant immediate intervention. Behavioral threat assessment is a means for early identification and intervention to prevent targeted violence long before an act of violence could occur. However, some individuals may come to the attention only when violence appears imminent by sharing final communications or engaging in acts that indicate an attack is fast approaching. Public safety professionals should understand these behaviors so they are able to recognize and intervene quickly and appropriately when a person is nearing violence. And again, I'm going to go back to Colt Gray really quick. Allegedly, his mother contacted Appalachian High School about 30 minutes prior to the mass shooting that Colt Gray did. Allegedly, Colt Gray sent his dad and his mom a text. So sometimes that indicates that this is a immediate threat, it's imminent, and you have to take quick response to try to prevent this act of violence, okay? Public safety professionals should understand these behaviors so they are able to recognize and intervene quickly and appropriately when a person is nearing violence. Nearly one quarter of attackers share final communications before their attack, including calling people to say goodbye, authoring suicide notes, and posting manifestos online. 13 attackers made communications indicating that an attack was imminent, including one attacker who posted a photo of a gun online and sent a text message to a friend saying it begins minutes before initiating his attack. Further, 18 attackers engaged in final acts such as selling or giving away their personal possessions, canceling a cable subscription, and transferring ownership of a home to family members. Excuse me. 1 second. My apology. So we're on the last two keys, okay? Let's go to the next page. Community violence prevention efforts require identifying and promoting appropriate resources for individuals who are managing stressful life circumstances, experiencing mental health issues, or facing a personal crisis. Nearly all attackers experience at least one significant personal stressor in their lives within 5 years of the attack. And for most, the stressors occurred within 1 year. Stressors experienced by the attackers were most often related to things like financial instability, family issues, romantic relationships, court proceedings, employment, personal health issues, victimization, and homelessness. Further, over half of the attackers experienced mental health symptoms prior to or at the time of their attacks, with many experiencing symptoms of multiple types of mental health disorders. The most common symptoms included depression, psychotic symptoms, and suicidal thoughts. Those tasked with violence prevention will often encounter individuals requiring crisis intervention as well as community resources and supports to overcome challenging circumstances. Communities should make available a variety of mental health and social services for those experiencing such challenges. So overall, they're saying that they really want the communities to promote and provide more resources. When people are under stress, when they're having a lot of challenges, when they're experiencing some crisis or mental health challenges, this can cause stress. And this usually precedes the mass shooting. You may have some financial issues. Maybe a divorce would be family related issues. Maybe you have a loss of employment. Maybe you have some terrible medical diagnosis, or even having some financial problems to where you're now homeless or evicted. All of these stressors are indicative that they're going to cause the person to have more feelings, more emotions, which if we have resources out there, social services, some mental health counseling, some programs that are available, maybe we can reduce the stress that some of these people are going through, okay? Now we're on the last key. Mass shootings have been perpetrated by those who were legally prohibited from possessing firearms. 1/3 of attackers in this study were prohibited by federal law from purchasing or possessing a firearm, including those with a prior felony or domestic violence conviction, fugitives from justice, those who previously adjudicated incompetent or involuntarily committed to a mental health institution, and those who were currently the subject of a domestic related protection order. Despite these prohibitions, 38 of these attackers used firearms during their attacks, including those that were acquired through straw purchases, theft, purchases from private sellers, and purchases parts online. Government agencies, courts, and law enforcement all have a role to play in ensuring weapons are not accessed by those individuals who are legally prohibited from gun ownership. Local communities may have additional avenues for keeping weapons out of the hands of individuals at risk of causing harm. For example, some states have passed laws establishing extreme risk protection orders, sometimes referred to as red flag laws. These state laws maintain due process and protect the rights of gun owners while also allowing for the temporary court-ordered removal of firearms from a person who poses an articulable risk of hurting other people or themselves. So I want to show you the next page. This is the table of contents, and we're going to start going into these individual topics in part 3. So I just want to inform you where we're headed next. Okay. Now, I always like to wrap things up with a video, something informative. So I'm going to go to a video. It's under 6 minutes long to wrap this video up. So it's by CBS News, and the video is titled Secret Service Report Analyzes Trends in Mass Casualty Attacks in the U.S. And it's not 6 minutes, it's almost 8 minutes long. So I will share this video now.
After a series of mass shootings in the U.S., the Secret Service released a report detailing trends in mass attacks. The report analyzed 173 attacks between 2016 and 2020, in which 3 or more people were hurt or killed in a public space, like a business, a church, or a school. Our Nicole Sganga spoke to the chief of the National Threat Assessment Center about the report's findings.
What we saw in this report is many of these attackers did plan their attacks ahead of time, and they decided and researched what type of weapon to use. So consistently over the 5-year time frame, firearms were the most often used. In fact, in 3/4 of the incidents, firearms were used, including long guns as well as handguns. But they also used other types of weapons, so bladed weapons, blunt objects, bombings, arsons, and so on. So it's really very important for us that people are recognizing these signs, because these attacks can be very deadly, as we know, and these tragedies are happening way too often.
And Nicole joins us now with more on this report. So Nicole, the report reveals nearly 3/4 of mass casualty attacks involved a firearm. What more do we know about how these guns are acquired?
Well, Vlad, nearly 1/4 of attacks mentioned in this report, at least one firearm was acquired illegally through straw purchases, theft, private sellers, acquiring parts online. In one really jarring example, a 38-year-old Kansas man physically threatened an ex-girlfriend to coerce her into purchasing him weapons 6 months before that shooting. And this is important. Over 80% of the incidents using firearms were fatal. For other weapons, just under half of the incidents resulted in death. This also stood out to me. Researchers were only able to track down the timing of gun acquisition in the case of 50 attacks. But of those 50, in 19 of those incidents, the firearm was accessed within 1 month of the attack. And in the case of 3, it was acquired on the very same day. Now, why is that important? Well, it can inform policy. For example, some states have waiting periods before purchasing a gun, or red flag laws that may have put a stop to some of these tragedies.
We just heard from Adam Yamaguchi, who was covering the shooting at the dance hall in Monterey Park. And one of the things he said was that the suspect in that case complained about people being mean to him at the dance hall. And it falls right in line with at least one of the commonalities that's listed in this report. Can you talk about some of them, not just that one, but other ones, other warning signs?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, grievances, it's so important. And you're right, there's no singular profile of a mass attacker. Assailants' ages, for example, ranged from 14 years old to 87, with an average of 34. Nearly all of the 180 attackers in the report were male. We also learned that more than half of the attackers, as you point out, were motivated by grievances, and they sought out retaliation for what they thought were perceived wrongs. Nearly all attackers experienced one or more significant stressor within 5 years of the attack. Divorce, domestic abuse, car accidents, school expulsions, disciplinary actions at work, even cyberbullying. And, this report found 39% experienced unstable housing within 20 years of the attack. Just over a third had a history of using illicit drugs or misusing prescription medications or substances like alcohol. And similar to the U.S. population writ large, over half of these attackers experienced mental health symptoms symptoms. Now, when it comes to some of these stressors we're talking about, it's important to note there's no causal relationship here. So, for example, the number of victims with mental health challenges far exceeds the number of attackers in the U.S. But these are all important reminders of warning signs, potential signals for early intervention.
So 3/4 of the attackers exhibited behavior that was concerning and that even caught the attention of family members, friends, neighbors. And researchers mentioned that statistic several times in this report. Break that down for us.
Yeah, red flags, right, Vlad? We always talk about it in the wake of these mass casualty events. And researchers at the Secret Service determined that nearly 2/3 of the 180 attackers exhibited objectively concerning, or in some cases, prohibitive behaviors. And that's important because it underscores the need for bystander reporting. In some ways, this is the latest iteration of see something, say something. This is if you notice someone in your life who is struggling, reach out to a work or school supervisor, a counselor. In the case of threats of violence, law enforcement. Here's one thing that stood out. Nearly 1/3 of the 180 attackers in this report issued final communications or acts suggesting an imminent attack. This included farewell videos, journals, that detailed their plans. Others made goodbye calls to friends and family, left suicide notes, terminated a lease, canceled their cable subscription, changed their life insurance. In one case, an attacker gave away their home. This is really concerning and grim behavior, some of which, candidly, is hard to read in this report. But the bottom line is that the research shows us that noticing these red flags has the potential to save lives.
Here's the thing about bystander reporting is I think people notice odd behavior, but they don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They might not want to call the police in because we've done, as you know, Nicole, several stories about people who are mentally unstable and their interaction with the police is not always positive and sometimes it can be deadly. So does the report issue any recommendations? How do we change this?
Absolutely. It's an important question, Anne-Marie. And, recommendations here include urging workplaces, schools, communities to establish violence prevention plans to try to identify and intervene with, current and former employees, students, neighbors, people who might have these grievances. Half of these events occurred at a place of business. And in half of those events, the individual had a connection to that business. Experts say don't wait until the threat is specific. If someone is, showing signals, acquiring weapons, speaking about previous mass casualty events, or issuing cryptic messages about retaliation, that's reason for concern. Reading this report, it's clear that the solution, though, is going to have to extend beyond just contacting law enforcement too, right? Nearly 1/3 of the attackers detailed in the study had at least one contact with law enforcement that didn't result in any arrest. In some cases that could mark someone slipping through the cracks. It could also mean individuals hadn't met a criminal threshold. And so, we need to start looking, beyond the bystander reporting. Certainly that's mentioned into the report, into also what policy changes can take place. And some of that has to start, candidly, here in Washington, D.C. But what this report is suggesting is that, given the number of red flags we see in these cases, members of the community, leaders, workplaces, schools need to start establishing the kind of programs to inform members of the community, hey, if you're concerned, here's the resource, here's where you need to go to. And the Secret Service currently consults with 21,000 organizations nationwide. Some of those are police stations, some of those are schools, some of them are large companies, tech companies. It was mentioned to me yesterday, Dr. Alathari said even the NBA and MLB, those big events are starting to coordinate with Secret Service on this because they know it's so important.
Nicole Skanka, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really think that was an excellent video. It kind of went over everything that we already read. And next time we're going to start getting into more. We're going to do part 3 and we're going to start with the introduction and continue on. So I want to thank you for spending time with me. I really, really appreciate it. I want you to please like, subscribe, share this information about these mass shootings and how we can try to improve on safety measures for prevention, right? This information from the U.S. Secret Service they have compiled to help us in the community to try to reduce this violence that we're seeing, not just in schools, but in businesses. It's very important that we take this serious and do something about it. So thank you again for spending this time with me. Please remember, stay smart, stay safe, stay savvy. Be well, all my friends. Have a beautiful afternoon. Bye, everybody.